You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
The polls are closed, the votes have been counted, and the official news desk of Oilers Nation Everyday is calling the race. Leon Draisaitl has been reelected the mayor of Smashville thanks to his 5-point performance on Tuesday night. Let's get into it with the lead. That was literally just a replay of how we started the show on November 2nd, because that was also a Tuesday. Draisaitl also put up 5 points against the Nashville Predators, and we can proudly say that he is still the mayor of Smashville. Also, I'm wearing the same sweater as I was on that day. All of it just lines up so perfectly. This is The Lead, brought to you by our friends at Soho down on Jasper Ave. Check them out, sohoyeg.com. You're in the area, you're driving by, you're like, hey, I need lunch today. Boom, $9, soup and sandwich special. You can't beat it. Shout out to Soho. This is Oilers Nation Everyday, streaming live on the Nation Network YouTube and streaming from the Sports Closet studio. Only 10, 11 days until Christmas. Don't waste any time. Hit up the Sports Closet. Get the gifts you need for the sports fan in your life. How about Leon Draisaitl? He is no doubt the topic of the lead, although I do feel a little bit bad not giving it to Zach Hyman, who scores his first career NHL hat trick. But it's honestly just hilarious to watch Leon Draisaitl do what he does against the Nashville Predators, and they just must be absolutely sick of him. When he came in on that 2-on-1 or that sort of broken rush, whatever you want to call it, when he fired it far side on Kevin Lankinen, as soon as he stepped in over the blue line, it was like he's scoring this goal. He's not missing, because he never misses against the Nashville Predators. Draisaitl leads the way with a 5-point performance. Hyman and McDavid, ho-hum, 4 points apiece. Tyson Barrie picks up a couple of assists. There is a lot to get to with this hockey game here tonight, but I want to bring in my boy Liam. I know you were fired up. We were riding with a lot of Leon Draisaitl bets last night. I'm a rich man this morning, but what did you make of Draisaitl just absolutely stomping the Predators again?
It's quite funny sometimes when you just actually just sit back and watch what's happening, and I quite frankly just laugh. Like when McDavid scored that goal last night, I slightly just chuckled to myself, and I thought, oh, that's not even like a top 10 goal for him. Like, it's just sometimes these guys do this stuff, and it's amazing, obviously, but what Draisaitl does to the Nashville Predators is out of this world. Like, he has 10 points in 2 games against Nashville this season. Like, that is just something else.
Oh, man. It's crazy. Clay is in here with a stat that Dusty shared on his show this morning. 19.6% of Draisaitl's points this year have come in the 2 games against Nashville. Yeah, he literally has 10 points against Nashville and like 40-some points against everyone else. His career numbers against the Nashville Predators are just absolutely outstanding. They can't stop him, and it's so much fun to watch. You are all chiming in on the Nation Network YouTube chat. Brad says, Dry is the mayor of Nashville. Hyman is the assistant to the mayor. Yeah, sure. Why not? Tyson's in. He says, what a game last night. Draisaitl lighting it up as per usual. Hyman, Hattie, McDavid, Magic, Soup stood tall. What more can you ask? Yes, a lot of you are very happy for our guy, Zach Hyman, getting his first career hat trick, like we said. So let's get into, actually, no, we got this graphic. Alex, you can flash this up. Here is the breakdown of Draisaitl versus Nashville this year and Draisaitl against everyone else. 2 games against Nashville, boom, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points. Against everyone else, first off, it's pretty wild to see just the numbers he's putting up. 41 points against everyone else. TC says, can we play the Predators every night, please? Yeah, why not? And of course, if you watched the show yesterday, you know our guy Jay Downton was in attendance at the game. He was outside of Bridgestone Arena doing Oilers Nation every day with his mayor sash on, his Draisaitl jersey. And here's a nice picture of our fearless leader posing next to Leon Draisaitl during warmups at the game. So Jay, hope you had a good time. That hat on your head is beautiful, and I know you threw it for the Zach Hyman Hattie as well. So shout out to Jay for being in attendance last night for that hockey game. The Draisaitl thing, like, again, what more can you even say? He just dominates the Preds. So we'll push that off to the side for now and get to our three big things from last night's hockey game, brought to you by Cornerstone Insurance, your destination for commercial, home, and auto insurance with over 90 years of success, and they're still growing. They insure the nation truck. They can help you out as well. My guy Bill, always there for me at Cornerstone Insurance. My first big thing, Liam, Zach Hyman, you beautiful son of a bitch. 3 goals, first NHL hat trick, 4 points. Someone in the chat called him the greasy goal king, and isn't that fitting? Because he really is, and he's the perfect complement. Like, I know that sometimes like the advanced numbers aren't great when he plays with Connor McDavid, but I still think he's the best complementary piece for Connor McDavid because he's willing to go to those dirty areas, because he refuses to be outworked. And anytime you sign a free agent who, has an injury history, is getting closer to 30 years old, he is 30 years old now, you give him a long-term deal, you're nervous about that. But last night was a shining example of why you paid Zach Hyman $5.5 million on a 7-year contract. He was unbelievable last night, and he's consistent. This isn't a guy who's streaky. This isn't a guy who looks disinterested every second night. He comes in, game out, and works his bag off, and I love it, Liam.
Yeah, exactly. Like, isn't Chalmers has that saying? He's like, not everyone can be Connor McDavid, but you can work hard enough to be Zach Hyman, right? And I mean, that's kind of who he is. He's just going to work his tail off every single night. And this also works well into my goal target for the day, Tyler. Would you like to hear about it?
Okay, because it's 51. So that if you're watching on the Nation Network YouTube, make sure you hammer that like button. We're looking to get to 51 likes today. But explain this.
So tonight, like I said, it's 51. 51 because that's how many goals Zach Hyman has scored with the Edmonton Oilers. He has 13 this season. He had 27 last season, and he had 11 in the playoffs. So it's not that crazy. So we're going to talk about Draisaitl probably a lot this show, rightfully so. He's the mayor of Smashville. But Zach Hyman has earned the right to be today's goal, which is 51. And right now we're at 18 with 50 viewers. So thank you everyone so far, but just keep smashing it.
Keep smashing that like button. I heard you before the show doing like a lot of math, and you were like, okay, 11, and I was like, man, this is going to be a wildly confusing goal, but it wasn't that bad. So good work. Let's get to 51 likes so Liam is allowed to take his lunch break today. Number 2 on my 3 big things. What was your reaction when that first goal went in on Jack Campbell?
I was disappointment, I think, is a good way to put it. Just like, what are we kind of in store for here today? But man, I think everyone just kind of looked at it, if you're defending him or you're against him, whatever it was, and it was just like, oh man, this again. But the guy bounced back. He had a good game.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too. Like I said yesterday on Oilers Nation Radio, that I would be happy if Jack Campbell had a 900 save percentage. All right, they won. He had a 900 save percentage. It's all good. But when that first goal goes in, first shot of the game, I don't think it hit anything. I know the broadcast duo, Louie and Jack, were like, oh, look how hard it dips. And it didn't dip because of any funny spin or because it hit anyone. It dipped because gravity. The puck wasn't shot that hard. It just legitimately found a way through Jack Campbell. And the first thought in my head was, are you kidding me? And the second thing was, this guy's going on waivers tomorrow. I was like, if that's what we're going to get tonight from Jack Campbell and it's another bad game, he's going on waivers. And he bounced back great. So we're not going to dwell on that poor goal. Instead, we're going to talk about the great saves that he made. He came across crease a couple of times and was fantastic. Tyler says it hit CC. If it hit CC, man, it barely grazed CC, and your goalie still got to stop that one. But I'm pushing that goal aside. We are not debating the first goal of the game anymore. It's off to the side. But Campbell played great, Liam, and I really hope this is a building block. I don't know if I'd go as far to start him on Thursday when you take on, I believe it's the Dallas Stars. Who do you play Thursday? Oh, no, St. Louis. St. Louis on Thursday.
St. Louis, yeah. I wouldn't start him either.
But you have that game on
Skinner's the starter on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Skinner's the starter on this team right now, and he's like, Jack Campbell needs to be played as a backup goalie right now. And take the money aside, who cares at this point? You gotta play better goalie to win the games. And Campbell, he can play on Saturday when you play one of the worst teams in the NHL, when you play the Anaheim Ducks.
100%. That's what I was gonna say. Is Thursday, You're going to go with Skinner Saturday. It's Campbell against a really bad hockey team in the Anaheim Ducks, and hopefully he can build on it and have back-to-back starts of over 900, because, again, that is the goal going forward for this guy. If when he starts, it's 900 or better, we cannot complain about anything that happens, which is why we're leaving that first goal alone. But Jack Campbell on the year now, 4.04 goals against average, 875 save percentage. So here's to hoping that that save percentage can continue to creep towards the 900 mark, because honestly, if he finds a way to scrape it back to 900 on the season, I'm going to be really impressed. Like, he needs to put that slow start behind him. Last night was a good building block. Let's move on to number 3. Actually, you know what? No, I like this one from Peter King. If you eliminate that first shot of the game, he was a 964 the rest of the way. And I like that. I think a lot of what's been going on with Jack Campbell is between the ears. And I think last night was maybe a step. And it maybe even showed him that something bad happens, move it to the side. You can be good the rest of the hockey game when you give up a bad goal. And he was lights out the remainder of the game. The third big thing, you know what? We've ripped the penalty kill a lot this year, and it went 5 for 5 last night. Hot damn. Nashville sucks on the power play. I get it. Sure. But still, the penalty kill going 5 for 5 is a big plus for me. Or was it 6 for 6? 5 for 5 or 6 for 6? One of the two.
5 for
Either
5.
way, 5 for 5. Yeah. PK was...
Who knows?
I don't know which one it was. The graphic. Anyways, the penalty kill was perfect. 5 for 5, 6 for 6. Who cares? That was good. That was an encouraging sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the whole Campbell argument too, right? Like, it doesn't matter who you play and just have a good game. And I think that's what the PK kind of needed. Like, it's the end of the day, like, yes, Nashville missed that great, I can't remember who it was, but they hit the post on the power play, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's nice to see them actually catch some breaks, because how many times, like, Bouchard scored 2 own goals on the penalty kill this year. So sometimes you need to get those little breaks, and I think that's kind of, since the Arizona game, and I get it, that game was more of like just kind of almost a throwaway game, but a bit of a confidence builder too, and I think we've seen a bit of a different team in some aspects of it, and the penalty kill, maybe this is their game to kind of get some mojo going again and start moving up the ladder.
Captain Felton, welcome into the chat. He says penalty kill is hopefully gaining momentum. Yes, the penalty kill gets a big thumbs up. Power play goes 2 for 2 as well. So you only get 2 looks with the man advantage, and you bury on both of them. That is great. So special teams, big thumbs up. Jack Campbell gets a big thumbs up as well. And obviously Zach Hyman hat-trick. Those are my 3 big things from last night's hockey game, brought to you by Cornerstone Insurance. Check them out, cornerstoneins.ca, for more information. The other big thing that came out of last night's game, and I see a bunch of you talking about it in the chat already, Anaheim Ducks general manager Pat Verbeek was in attendance for the 2nd consecutive game. He was watching the Oilers take on the Minnesota Wild, and maybe you were like, maybe he's watching the Wild. Maybe he's doing some pre-scouting for the Oilers versus Ducks on Saturday. I can tell you emphatically that he is not doing any pre-scouting for the game on Saturday. There's more to this. Michael Russo of The Athletic says he was eating, that is, Pat Verbeek was eating with Ken Holland as well on Monday, and then he traveled to Nashville to watch the Oilers in person once again. GMs don't just do this kind of stuff for fun, Liam. Pat Verbeek wasn't sitting in his house, probably somewhere on Malibu Beach or whatever, going, you know what? I think I want to head out to Minnesota and just watch the Oilers play for funsies. That's not how this works. Pat Verbeek's here for a reason. And I see Sergeant Battle asking the question, does Jesse Puljujarvi take the plane home with the Ducks on Saturday? And does someone from the Ducks stay in Edmonton? I'll be honest, this is a legitimate conversation to have. This isn't making up something for the sake of clicks. This isn't just talking about something because we're running out of things to talk about or something like that. Pat Verbeek scouting the Oilers. Alex, put that tinfoil hat away. This is legit. I don't want to see it in my little preview window. This is legit, Liam, and I think this is a really intriguing fit between Puljujarvi and the Ducks, if that is what this is about.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this isn't just something that happens every night in the NHL. Like, GMs aren't just sat there thinking, oh, I'll just go to this game. Like, he has to travel to get there. Like, wasn't in his back door. So it's such an intriguing thing to happen. We kind of saw something very similar. This was a while ago now, but when Alex Hemsky was traded to Ottawa, right? Like, his last game for the Oilers was against Ottawa, and he scored 2 goals that game, and he got on the plane with them basically and left Edmonton with Ottawa. So I don't know. It's interesting, and I thought one thing I didn't know actually the Ducks GM was there last night. Did you find it interesting that they were trying to get Puljujarvi a goal last night? Because it became very obvious in the third period that he was bumped up whilst Hyman was on a hat trick to try and get a goal. What did you make of that? Do you think that kind of had anything to play with it? Like, oh, look what he can do with like top guys and stuff.
Yeah, I think I think it was interesting. I don't think Jay Woodcroft coaches with that kind of stuff in mind. I think
Yeah.
that might have just been an instance where it was like, hey, we're winning in this hockey game. The penalty kill, having to have a penalty kill as often as you did, was thrown off the lines a little bit. So Puljujarvi just worked his way up there. Maybe Jay Woodcroft is thinking about it from a perspective of like, hey, got to get this guy going a little bit. But I do think it works out that way. You know, it's a happy coincidence is what I'd call it. If the Ducks were indeed interested in Puljujarvi, potential returns. Daniel Nugent-Bowman of The Athletic wrote the other day that some within the Oilers would consider it a win just to get rid of Puljujarvi's $3 million cap hit. Frank Saravalli was on with Bob Stauffer yesterday on Oilers Now, and he said the Oilers at this point might need to add a sweetener just to get rid of Puljujarvi's $3 million cap hit. And I think if that is the case, you hold off on it. If this was the trade, if the trade deadline was tomorrow and it was like, hey, we are trying to make a deal here. We're trying to get something done. We need to get rid of Puljujarvi's money. And all the team is offering is a 4th rounder. Sure. At that point, maybe you'd feel the squeeze a little bit and you should do it. But those reports coming out speaks to how low Puljujarvi's value is right now. And for me, at a moment when your forward group is still banged up, missing McLeod, missing Fogle, missing Evander Kane, and Puljujarvi's value is low, I think it would be a mistake to just jump and trade this guy for magic beans just to get out of his salary right now. You should wait, see if he has a couple of good months, and then if you need to salary dump him in March, you do it then. But right now, I think just salary dumping Puljujarvi would be a big mistake.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's not doing any harm, I think is a good way to put it. Like when he's out on the ice, he's not playing terribly for this team. He just can't score at the moment, and that's his biggest issue. But you know, I just think having to add a sweetener to get rid of a guy where the Oilers are right now just isn't something they need to even look at all. I think Puljujarvi, like what was it? I think Bobby said it on the show yesterday too, right? Like he had 23 points in 29 games last year. Like people know this guy can play in the NHL. He's just in a bit of a bad spot, and I don't think it's fair just to the Oilers for the players just to be like, oh well, we got to get rid of him for a 3rd because we need the money. It's like, well, what's the plan? Like, who's coming in? You know, I guess that's my question. Like, are they wanting? Is there somebody else on the table to replace Puljujarvi right now, or are we just gonna run the risk of having a bottom 6 with Hamlin, Derek Ryan, Holloway, Shaw, and whoever else they throw in there?
An interesting name, and Tyler's in the chat asking about it. You were asking about it yesterday too. I remember that. Max Comtois, 23 years old, pending RFA with Arbrights. This guy's 5 goals in 19 games this season. That would be an interesting one for a handful of reasons. One, he can score, and he's proven he can score. At different points in his career. He's played in just over 140 games with the Ducks in his career. He's played 165 games with the Ducks in his career. He scored 34 goals. Back in the 2020 season, he had 16 goals in 55 games. He can score, and like Puljujarvi, he brings some size to your lineup. He's 6'2", 210 pounds, but he plays with a little bit more bite. And I think that's something that could interest Ken Holland. We know the Oilers. Frank has said this on the show. By the way, Frank Saravalli's hit on Oilers Nation Everyday is going to be tomorrow. They want to be tougher to play against. The organization has identified that as a need. And I think Max Comtois makes you more difficult to play against. So in that sense, I could see the Oilers wanting to do something along the lines of a Puljujarvi for Comtois swap. Would that be enough from the Ducks' perspective? I don't know. Would Anaheim want to pick? Would they throw some conditions on that? I honestly, I'm not sure. I have a very hard time reading the value on these two players because, again, I think Puljujarvi should be more valuable than a salary dump, but there are some around the league that don't view it that way. So Comtois is the name I would watch because I really think it's either going to be something like that where you're swapping Puljujarvi for like a bottom six piece, because, again, that's kind of what he is right now, or you're just moving him for a draft pick. And the Ducks do have a lot of draft picks. They have 3 second-rounders and 2 third-rounders. But again, if this was the deadline and you're like, okay, we want to go get Max Domi and we want to go get a defenseman. Sorry, I kind of stole your thunder there with Domi. We'll get to that in a second, Liam. But if you wanted to go get Max Domi and a defenseman and you're like, we need extra pick capital and we need cap space, then swapping Puljujarvi for a second at that point would make sense. Right now, you need warm bodies. You need guys in the lineup who can contribute at the NHL level. And while Puljujarvi's not scoring, you can still trust him at 5-on-5. And he's an NHL caliber player. And you shouldn't make a habit of trading guys when their value is low unless you are 100% sure that you are going to win that trade. So I think there's smoke to this Ducks Oilers thing. My big take on it would be if you're going to move him now, needs to be a body coming back.
I have a bit of a hypothetical, and this is a name that's been thrown in the chat a little bit too. And I was just looking at some of the numbers. Troy Terry. Now, obviously, a very good hockey player. I think he was close to 40 goals last year, maybe about 38 or something like that. I think he has over 10 this year on a bad team. If they're like, hey, you can have Troy Terry, but we want Puljujarvi in a second, I think that's a deal I would take.
Oh, yeah, you take that every day of the week. The guy almost scored 40 goals last year. The Ducks wouldn't move him. He's an American-born guy.
You don't think they would move him?
No. Why would they move him?
I'm just trying to think of like where the Ducks are right now. So there was all those stats flying around last night, and they got thumped by Toronto. They have one regulation win this season, right? They're really bad, and I think they're going to be really bad for a long time. So I just think it's an interesting player because of the fact that, like, when are they going to be good? 4 years from now when he's 29? Like, and now you've got to sign him at the end of the season. Like, I wonder if there's a way the Oilers could almost manipulate it a little bit that you get him out of there because it's like, well, why would we want him? And I know there's the argument of like, oh, well, Puljujarvi's 24 and in 4 years he's going to be that, but there's also a pretty good chance they won't have any relationship with Puljujarvi and he's just a free agent at the end of the season. Do you kind of get what I'm trying to say?
I think if you want to get a 25-year-old who has scored has almost scored 40 goals and is on pace to score 30 this year, I think you need to give up a whole heck of a lot more than one first-round pick. And I just don't.
Maybe you do.
The Ducks won't move him. The Ducks won't move him. There's no way.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting person to kind of throw out there, like low salary. Like, I'm just trying to think. Like, maybe you have to give. I would give probably a first for him, Puljujarvi and Lavoie. Maybe that's it.
Wouldn't even be close, man. I'm telling you, he's legit. Like, this guy would have been in the conversation to be on the U.S. Olympic team last year. It would take so much. Another name that actually someone's thrown in the chat that I think is a interesting target would be a guy like Max Jones, 6'3". He's a centerman. He shoots left, so he's not a perfect fit because you'd like to have a right shot. But he would bring some toughness. I don't know if I love that as a straight-up Puljujarvi swap because I think you're losing a little bit too much skill there. But Max Jones, he is a left wing, right wing. 1.3 million under contract for next season. If you were to view him as a guy who's like, okay, he's not going to give us a lot of offense, but he's going to make us harder to play against, so we like that. He'd save us $1.7 million this year against the cap, and he would be a cheap bottom six player for next year. He's 24 years old, so realistic to expect. There could be some upside to this guy's game. The lack of offense really would concern me with Jones. He only has 19 career goals, and he's played the equivalent of 2 full seasons with the Anaheim Ducks. His best year was in 1920 when he scored 8 goals in 59 games, only had 12 points. I would like to see them aim higher than Jones, which is why I bring up Maxime Comtois, who is a year younger and has a better history of scoring. But, Max Jones is a guy who, if Puljujarvi's value really is as low as we're hearing it is, maybe Max Jones is an interesting target there. Kirby's in the chat. He says Connor Brown. Connor Brown is out for the season, so no. Ski Bum says Coach's Corner with Frank Saravalli. I might actually steal that one for tomorrow. I think that's funny. Someone threw in, while we're just on the topic of this Ducks one, sorry, Liam, John Klingberg. And they said, do you move kind of a package of Barrie and Puljujarvi and get Klingberg? The issue with Klingberg is his no trade clause is in effect until January 1, and then it turns into a 10-team no trade list. So Klingberg has to agree to come here. Okay, that's one big wrinkle. 2, he's making $7 million. So again, the Ducks would have to take back Tyson Barrie. Also, he's a right shot D man. So the Oilers would have to move a right shot D. So I get the theory behind saying, oh yeah, Puljujarvi and Barrie, the money works. You open up a spot on the right side. The Oilers have had interest in John Klingberg in the past. They tried to get him this summer before he signed the 1-year deal in Anaheim. I get it. I think right now it's not super realistic, and I think his value might honestly be higher than Puljujarvi and Barrie. It's probably a situation where the Ducks and Klingberg struggled a little bit. I get it. But the Ducks probably want to get a first-round pick for that guy, and I don't see them valuing Tyson Barrie very much. Again, you said, Liam, they're a rebuilding team. They're a long ways away from contending. So why would they feel like Barrie's a good asset? So I see why that got thrown out as a potential option, but I think you have to include futures in that deal. And honestly, at this point, Puljujarvi's value is low. Barrie's not a future. You would have to consider throwing in first rounders or high-end prospects to get that done, and I'm not sure if the Oilers need to do that.
The interesting thing about Anaheim, I guess, to close out on this conversation, is almost how they just have no good contracts to really move. Like a lot of their guys are just not on very good deals. Like I know we've mentioned like Comtois, Terry, and Jones are all good, but then like on the blue line, like who wants Kevin Shattenkirk at almost $4 million? I guess you can like retain a lot of it, but I just see they're just in a bad spot almost to like actually try and get guys out too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I'd be looking more at their forward group and going like, boy, if you want to try to get assets, like no one's touching the extra years on Henrique or Silverberg. On the blue line, I think Shattenkirk retained at 50% would get you a pretty nice return. I think Dmitry Kulikov, if you were willing to keep half of that, would also get you a pretty solid return. And then obviously there's John Klingberg. So they could probably get, you know, if you look at those 3 assets as kind of A, B, and C in terms of value, a first, a second, and a third for moving those guys out. But I don't know what their approach is going to be. They'll be an interesting team to watch. You know what the great part is? Oilers haven't played them yet this year, and hopefully the Ducks start selling off and look real bad by the time they play the Oilers. I know they play Saturday, but I'm talking about later in the year.
What number is Troy Terry?
Dude, you got to drop this. Like that's like me saying they should go get Cole Caulfield.
But no, it's so different. It's so different.
It's not.
It is different. I understand it would take a lot, but I don't think he's going to, I don't know. My argument's hard to explain. But I could see him moving him. I really could. Like if you're Tampa Bay, we don't have a 19. That could work.
That's what's standing in the way.
I'm just thinking of like what Tampa Bay did a couple of years ago. I know we're in like a different spot where they were just like trying to find value contracts from bad teams. Like they got they're obviously a bit different, but like Gaudreau and who was the other guy? Blake Coleman
and like, Hagel and
Hagel. So I think teams are willing to move these guys, and I don't think Anaheim's like sitting there thinking, "Oh, like Troy Terry is untouchable." Like I think their untouchables are probably the younger guys, right? I think that's my argument. Is you got a value contract there. Someone could probably give you like my first hypothetical is probably very wrong, to be fair. But if someone's like, "We'll give you 2 first-round picks for Troy Terry," and this and that, I just don't see them saying no.
So if you use like Brandon Hagel as the comparison, Brandon Hagel hasn't come close to scoring 40 goals in his career. Troy Terry has. And he cost you a first, a third, and Radish and Kachuk. That's a big haul, man. Like they got 4 assets for him. I don't know.
I'm in. I'll do it.
I know you're in. I'm in too. It's not realistic. Okay, let's talk about, you set me up for a nice segue, so I'll give you that. You are doing a new Nation Thoughts article. And what's the question this week for your nation thoughts? And people, if you want to chime in, you can head over to Liam's Twitter at Liam Horban.
Yeah, so the question is obviously we talk a lot about Kane, Taves, Chychrun, even Klingberg. We've spoken about them on the show already. I wanted to kind of know who were some of the other depth pieces, I suppose, the Oilers could really go after. Mine was Max Domi. I think just his contract would really work well. At 50%, it'd be 1.5. And, some people in the chat were already talking about how, like, they don't need, in my Twitter was already talking about how we don't need to add another forward. It's like, I don't think it's a bad thing to add another forward to this group. And other names on the list, I'll read them off here quickly. A lot of people calling for Luke Shen, which was interesting, I think. And I get it. I get the Luke Shen one. Max Comtois was on there. Someone even suggested Bo Horvat. That would be a tough one to even get close to. Lars Eller was one name in there. And this, I'll give you another one, then we can talk about it a bit. Was Vladislav Gavrikov. And I know that name's been thrown out there a lot on Oilers Nation Radio too. So, yeah, a lot of interesting names. And I just feel like that's where the Oilers are going to be fishing more than the big names. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't totally disagree with you on that. I think this is a team where you're so set with high-end skill, right? McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins having the year that he is. I don't think you need to go out there and get another star scoring winger. That's just, if you gave me the choice between one Bo Horvat or getting 2 or 3 pieces that are going to help around this roster, I take the quantity over the quality in that instance. I love the idea of Lars Eller. Tyler is in and says Nick Jensen in the chat. Maybe there's a chance for you to go to Washington, do a little one-stop shopping. Lars Eller makes you tougher to play against in your bottom 6. And Nick Jensen's going to make you better defensively from the blue line out. So I think that is a really intriguing fit. And Washington, they need to stay out of the race, but as of right now, they are out of the race. So I think Lars Eller, Nick Jensen, those are 2 guys I'd have a lot of interest in. I saw someone commented Max Comtois on your tweet. I think that's a really interesting idea. Obviously, Vlad Gavrikov is a name I'd go after, but there are reports that Gavrikov is going to cost you a first-round pick. So, again, like you're talking about staying away from the big names, and Gavrikov, as of right now, I'd have him in that category as a big name.
So I guess another part of this question is, if someone like Gavrikov or whoever it may be is going to cost you a first-round pick, is it almost not worth going after the top guys then, I guess, right? Like if those guys are going to just have as much value to add, like maybe it's just worth going after a Kane or a Taves or Chychrun, Klingberg, whoever it may be. Because they're guys who are going to have a legit positive impact every single night on your team, where a guy like Max Domi, he might have a couple off nights or he might never show up, right? Like, you kind of know what you're going to get with the higher end guys.
Yeah. I like Jonathan Taves still. It might cost you a first-round pick at this point and probably an extra asset to make sure the money all works. But I think Taves is a really good fit. I think the veteran leadership side of that is really intriguing. I'm not against going after a big name. I just think that you made a good point that there is something to be said about just checking down a little bit. Like, what's better, a first-round pick that only gets you Vlad Gavrikov or a first-round pick that gets you both Nick Jensen and Lars Eller, and that lets you make the money work in that process, right? Like, in which one of those 2 scenarios are you a more complete team that's ready for a deep playoff run? And I would argue it's probably the one where you get 2 pieces.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say, like, the money stuff, too. Like, I wonder if that's why I think the Puljujarvi stuff with Anaheim is so interesting, because the Oilers, whatever they do, if they want to make a move, they have to move out money to get a guy, right? So is this your move right now coming up? If it's on Saturday, like, is that it? Like, is that the move they make? Like, it's going to be so difficult just for Ken Holland to really make anything work unless the unfortunate happens and we get more injuries, which gives us more salary cap space.
Yeah. Daniel says Ivan Provorov. And I mean, that would be definitely in the category of like a big swing for a handful of reasons. One, Gavrikov is young, Provorov, that is young, 25 years old. He signed $6.75 million for 2 more seasons. This is a guy who projects to be a legit top pairing D-man for a long time. Making that money work would be very difficult. So that's a big part of it. He's a left D, so he'd fit perfectly. I would go, like, if the acquisition cost was the same, I'd take Provorov over Chychrun. Apparently, the Flyers have looked into or had conversations about moving Provorov, so that's a name, like, if you want to make a big swing, maybe you go for a guy with term like that, and go after a guy like Ivan Provorov.
Yeah, I mean, if Ivan Provorov's available and he's within the price that you can afford, then I think you've got to take the swing at it. Ken Holland seems like a very safe GM, I guess you could say. But saying that, he did go out and get Evander Kane last summer, mid-season, sorry, so a lot different.
Yeah, he did, and that was, but that even that in that moment was safe, right? Because it was $2.2 million against the cap, and the upside there was huge. And I mean, his best trade, and I know Low Tide wrote about this today, but his best trade as GM of the Oilers is probably the Kulak deal. Everything considered there. You know, he helped you in the playoff run. He was the Tyson Barrie whisperer throughout the playoffs, and then you signed him to a great contract as well, and it only cost you a second-round pick in William Lagesson, who's playing in Europe now. So I think that's almost where he's best, is when he's not making those big swings and he's just working around the edges. So maybe it's a sense of play to your strengths, Kenny Holland. Liam, we did hit our like goal. We are now up to 60. We also peaked over 100 on YouTube. So it's been a good show. Shout out to everyone on the Nation Network YouTube watching along. If you have a couple questions before we wrap up the show today, feel free to drop them in the chat. Tomorrow's going to be another Sherwood Ford Giant Game Day edition of the show. Some love to our friends at Sherwood Ford. Their mobile service department is fantastic. And actually, if you go in the description of this show in the YouTube, on the YouTube, you can find a link to find out more about their mobile service department. Shout out to Sherwood Ford the Giant. We'll have a game day show tomorrow. TC says, if St. Louis continues to drop and they sell at the deadline, what are the chances that Colton Parayko would be even remotely available? Local product. I love that angle, but I'm going to rain on your parade a little bit here. They signed him to a long-term deal. This is a guy that's 29 years old. He signed for the next 6 seasons at $6.5 million. You're not squeezing that in if you're the Edmonton Oilers. It's just a little bit too much money, and I think the Blues are kind of committed to him. They have a lot of expensive pieces on the blue line. I don't think they're going to be able to trade any of them. If we're talking about the Blues as a team that you could maybe look at, I would be obviously intrigued at getting a chance to see Ryan O'Reilly in an Oilers jersey. $7.5 million. They keep half because it's the deadline. You move Puljujarvi. You've pretty much made the money work at that point. So, yeah. There's not a lot, though. St. Louis is in a weird spot. They don't have a lot of good trade assets.
I feel like they're a team that actually doesn't want to blow it up right now. Like, they have so many guys who can still playing at such a high level, and young guys too, like Jordan Kyrou. Thomas is still really young, right? Like, I don't think they're really wanting to get rid of anyone.
Tyler says Armstrong does usually sell when his players get old. Yeah, he's done that before. If you think back to the deadlines where they sold off Paul Stastny, even though they weren't totally out of it, the year they traded Kevin Shattenkirk for a first-round pick, and the next year they were up in the playoffs. Tom is in with another target, Gustav Nyquist. Holland has history with him. Nyquist is interesting. He's playing on the Blue Jackets top line right now. He's a streaky scorer, but he can give you offense. $5.5 million. Don't love that price tag, but you retain him down to 2.75. Maybe that's a guy you look at, but he'd be pretty low on my list. Like, I'd rather go after a guy like Tyson Barrie, who gives you a little bit more bite. Nathan says the Klim Kostin deal is looking pretty good right now. Hell yeah, it is. Hell yeah, it is. I'm excited to see Klim Kostin go up against his former team. We'll talk about that move a little bit more tomorrow when we preview the Oilers and the Blues game. Liam, let's get to our bets for today, courtesy of our friends at Betway 19+. As always, please play responsibly. Last night, we had a good night. Draisaitl 2+ points. Oilers find a way to win as well. Zach Hyman hit his shot prop as well if you were riding on that. Tonight, just 3 games in the NHL. What do you like?
Yeah, so with the first one, I thought I'd keep it local so people could actually watch if they chose to. So Calgary versus the Vancouver Canucks. Bo Horvat shot prop. Hitting it pretty consistently. Another man that's hitting his shot prop consistently, Matt Zuccarello, and they play the Detroit Red Wings. I'm just going with both of them over 2.5 shots. Conveniently, they're both minus 134. So there you go. Like I said, like not a lot going on in the NHL tonight. 3 games. So yeah, quiet slate.
I love that Zuccarello bet. That's going to be, I'm riding with you on that one for sure. I'm taking the Flames to win that game. Spencer Martin against Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom's starting to turn it around. 4 of his last 5 games, he's allowed 2 or less goals. I like taking the Flames on the puck line tonight and the Matt Zuccarello shot prop. Good stuff.
There you go. We'll keep the streak alive. Had a good week so far.
Yeah.
I think we're perfect. I'm trying to think what we did Monday, but I'm pretty sure we're perfect so far this week.
Let's get to the wrap for today's show. Great work, everybody, on YouTube today. Lots of likes. Hit our like goal again. We're riding a heater of hitting our like goal, Liam. Maybe we should get a little bit more aggressive. Yeah. Maybe tomorrow we should try push it into the 70s. Frank Saravalli's on the show. Not bad.
I could figure some math out to get it up to 70.
We're going to wrap up today's edition of Oilers Nation Everyday live from the Sports Closet studio, sportscloset.ca. If you have a sports fan in your life and you're like, I never know what to buy them, Sports Closet has gift cards. Let them go pick out what they want. St. Albert Mall, Sherwood Park Mall, and Kingsway Mall as well. Shout out to Soho down on Jasper Ave, Cornerstone Insurance, and Sherwood Ford the Giant. Also, our friends at Betway. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, noon Mountain. We'll get set for Oilers and Blues. Chat with you then.